The instruments that we made many years ago and those that we make today will be going 50 and 75 years hence. This is our 125th anniversary. The innovation started with my grandfather in the 20s. Drum shells until that point were all single ply and very thick and very heavy. Grandpa developed a multi-ply drum shell that was lighter, stronger, stayed in round better, and today nearly every drum in the world is made that way.
You think about the guy who's getting that drum set, you want it to be their kit, the kit of their life, I mean, a lot of people save a lot of money to buy our drums, and we want to make sure that they get something that is really deserving of that.
We developed a wonderful recipe in the early 50s, and we've been faithful to the recipe ever since. We're making the same sauce, and it's just as good today because we're making it the same way with the same ingredients. And one of the ingredients is skilled people who care about what they're doing and care about every operation that goes into making a drum.
Gretsch invented ply drum shells in 1927. That was a 3-ply shell. We then, somewhere in the mid-50s, we switched to a 6-ply shell, and we've been using that same recipe ever since. First thing we do with the drum shell is we cut it to the proper depth, based upon the customer's order. The next thing Josh is going to do to this drum shell is treat the inside. First thing we do is we address the seam on the inside with wood filler. Then after that, he'll sand the inside using our balloon sander, which we've been using since the 70s. We sand the outside of the shell using a machine that started out originally at the Slingerland-Niles plant back in the 50s. Mr. Gretsch acquired that machine in the 80s, and we've been using it ever since. It's a one-of-a-kind, old relic of a machine, but we certainly love it. First thing we do with the shell is we'll sand the outside with a belt sander using a 100 grit belt. After we do that, we switch to a 150 grit belt and sand it again. Then the final sanding is done with the 180 grit by hand.
Our process is so old school, and so every single drum is a unique instrument because it goes through everybody's hands. So I think Gretsch drums have a lot of soul in them, and I think that everybody that works here kind of puts that energy into each drum.
The people making our drums now are long-termers and been with us 5, 6, 10 years, and they like what they do and they're good at it. They're into it.
All of our stains are applied by hand to the shell. We find that by rubbing the stain in, it allows the natural beauty of the wood to really come out later on in our process. First thing Juan is doing is she puts a wash coat on the shell. That's half stain and half reducer. After that, we continue with more coats of full-strength stain. Some of the drums may take 2 or 3 coats. Some may take as many as 10 coats. It really depends on what's going on with the wood. The next thing Juan is going to do to this drum is start applying nitrocellulose lacquer to it. We use nitrocellulose lacquer because as the drum ages, it continues to harden and becomes a nice vintage mellow instrument. Most of the other drum makers do not use nitrocellulose, and their drums don't age like ours. First we put a sealer coat on, then sand the drum, and come back and do a couple more coats of lacquer. We keep doing that until the drum's ready to go. We also heat our lacquer to 150 degrees. This allows us to spray the lacquer without any additives and gives us a nice solid coat of lacquer. Lorena is doing scuff sanding, which is our sanding between coats. She starts off using an orbital with 240 grit sandpaper on it. Then she goes back and does a hand sand with 400 grit. The purpose of doing this is to get the drum as smooth as possible so that the next coat of lacquer goes on evenly and smooth.
It's a very intimate process, and when you see the craftsmen working and building the drums, it's really about working with an organic material in the wood, and I do feel there is something when they're working on the drums, there's something very personal going on there.